All right. We checked homework. We're getting ready to do the nature of force on page 36. No homework questions tonight. Monday we will have homework, but we're giving these guys a free weekend. I think it's family weekend or something. No homework, right? Probably next weekend. I'm probably a weekend ahead, and I'm going to get stuck with 2 weekends not giving you work. I'm just kidding, of course. All right. So we're talking about the nature of force. A hard kick sends a soccer ball shooting down the field towards the goal. Just in time, the goalie leaps forward, stops the ball, and quickly kicks it in the opposite direction. In a soccer game, the ball is rarely still. Okay? In motion, its motion is constantly changing. Why? What causes an object to move, start moving, stop moving, or change direction? And of course, the answer is force. Okay? When somebody kicks the ball, they're applying force to that ball, so the ball is going to go in the opposite direction. Okay? When someone stops it, be it a goalie with his hands catching it, or being someone else on the field that gets a stop with their foot, they're applying force that stops that ball in order to change direction and possibly go the other way, or if they're on the same team, to continue it downfield. But either way, that ball has stopped, changed direction, started again. So it's constant, and force is being applied every time that happens, okay? So what is force? In science, the word force has a simple and specific meaning. A force is a push or a pull, okay? When one object pushes or pulls another object, you say that that first object exerts a force on the second object. You exert force on a computer key when you are typing something, okay? It's actually, you're applying force that makes it go down and work, okay? When you sit in that chair, you're actually applying a force. When you stand up and move that chair away from your desk, or in the case of 6th grade, when you move the desk away from the chair. Because I come in every morning and the desk, they walk up about 2 feet during the day. It's amazing how they do that. But that is force. Force is being applied. That's why things are moving. Okay, these desks does not actually have feet. They can't actually move by, well, they do have feet, but they can't move by themselves. Okay, so they have to have enough force applied to them to walk towards me during the day. Yes, Caleb, with both hands up.
Yay. Okay. So in soccer, you can change the direction of the ball depending on where you apply force. Like if you want the ball to lift up, you use your foot and you kick it from the ground.
That is true.
Yeah, you kick it below.
Yeah, that's true.
And then if you want it to go straight, you can kick it straight in the middle. Or if you want it at the curve, you can do it on the side.
Do that big banana kick.
I'm sure Coach Brown.
Yeah, he was talking about depending on where you apply the force on the ball as to where, underneath it, if it's up. So, eye-opening information. Okay. All right. Now, like velocity and acceleration, a force is described by its strength and by the direction of which it applies. Okay. If you push on the door, you exert a force in a different direction than you might if you pull on the door. Okay? Pretty simple. We got right here our classroom door. To go out, you apply a force, you're pushing. Okay? And the door will open. If you go up and start pulling on this side, it's not going to go anywhere. Same with the outside. If you walk up and start pushing on it to try to get in, you're not coming in. But if you pull, you're applying force, it will work. Okay? So, the strength of a force is measured in the SI unit called the Newton, okay, named after Sir Isaac Newton, okay? And that's written as a capital N. When you measure something in newtons, that is a capital N, okay? You don't have to write out his name every time, okay? They estimate that you exert about 1 Newton of force if you pick a small lemon up off of the counter. You are applying about 1 Newton of force. So that kind of gives you an idea of what a force is there, how they measure
What
it.
if we took up Brady?
And you would exert a little bit more force. Okay? The direction and strength of a force can be represented by an arrow. The arrow points in the direction of the force, The length of the arrow tells you the strength of the force, and the longer the arrow, the greater the force. And we'll talk about that right down here in a second. Okay? Often, more than one single force can act on an object at one time. The combination of all forces acting on an object is called the net force. Okay? The net force determines whether an object moves and also what direction is it going to move in. Okay? If you're applying two different forces in two different directions, the stronger force is probably going to win, right? I mean, think about a 180-pound running back busting through the line, and all of a sudden he's got a 350-pound lineman standing there waiting for him. That 180-pound running back usually comes to a stop pretty quick, okay? Because 180 pounds force coming this way and 350 pounds force going that way, the 350 pounds force is greater. Okay, so it's usually that's usually not going to be a good outcome for the 180-pound running back.
Wouldn't the line take away some of the speed, and if the 180 pounds, like...
No, 180 pounds, getting a handoff from a quarterback is not at full speed at this point in time. Now, if he's already broke a weight and he is 50 yards downfield, he's not going to run into anybody that weighs 350 pounds, because that guy ain't going to run that far. He's a lineman, not a safety or a cornerback, okay? So, that's why I said as he came through the line.
My dad played quarterback.
Now, if you got a safety that goes 180 pounds and a running back that goes 180 pounds, and the safety just steps over in front of him as he is chugging along at full speed, yes, that running back will indeed drive, because he has actually generated more force. Even though they weigh the same, he has generated more force.
Even if he's 200 pounds, if he's 50,
and will drive him back. He very well might get tackled, but he will drive him back because he has generated more force. Okay? So yes, you are correct on that. Okay? When the forces act in opposite direction, they also combine to produce a net force. However, you must pay attention to the direction of each force. Adding a force acting in one direction to a force acting in the opposite direction is the same as adding a positive number to a negative number. So when two forces act in an opposite direction, they combine by subtracting. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. This is what we talk about. That can get a little confusing just reading it. The net force always acts in the direction of the greater force. If the opposite forces are of equal strength, there is no net force, and there is no change in the object's motion. And what it's talking about, like if you got two forces here in the picture there on page 37, figure 2, you got someone is applying 5 newtons of force, and someone else is applying 5 newtons of force, but they're going in the same direction. Then you add those up, and you have 10 newtons going in the same direction. You notice how the arrow is bigger on the 10 newton. It takes in both the 5 newtons, right? But on the second graph there, you got one force of 5 newtons going in one direction, and then you've got a force of 10 newtons going in the opposite direction. Well, that 10, of course, is a stronger force, so it's going to drive that 5 back. So now it shows you that it is 5 newtons going in the direction of the 10, because the 10 is applying a greater force. Okay? And then if you got 5 newtons going one direction and 5 newtons going up against it in the opposite direction, then you get a net zero. It's a zero, because they're not going anywhere. It's the same force being applied on both sides, so no one's going to go anywhere on that one. Okay? So it's really you read the mumbo jumbo of explaining it, and it can be complicated. But if you look at the graph and just think about it logically, it makes sense. Okay, it makes sense. The more force you apply, if Evie came up here and applied, she and I went hand to hand here, and we started applying force to each other. She's going to push me all over the place because she's stronger and stuff. So she's going to move me all over the place. She's going to be able to apply more force. Cause her, 80-pound self is going to push my large self all over the place. We won't talk about weight here with this. Okay. Unbalanced forces. Okay? Whenever there is a net force acting on an object, the force is unbalanced. Okay? An unbalanced force can cause an object to start moving, stop moving, or change direction. Unbalanced forces acting on an object results in a net force and causes a change in the object's motion. That would be kicking that soccer ball that we talked about, okay? That would be an unbalanced force. You're applying more force one way than you are the other. So it's going to make that ball go in the opposite direction. Yes, ma'am.
In the first picture, the guy doesn't have braces, and the second one he does.
First picture is what?
In the graph, the first one he doesn't have braces, and then the second one he does.
Okay.
He does. You just can't tell.
All right. All right, up there, speaking of the picture that Rihanna's talking about, two people exert forces on a box. When they both push a box to the right, their individual forces are together to produce a net force in that direction, okay? Since a net or an unbalanced force acts on the box is going to move to the right because both of them are pushing to the right. So the box obviously is going to move to the right, okay? Then they got the individual forces, and that's going to cause an unbalanced force, okay? They're assuming that the guy is stronger than the girl, and that he is pushing in one direction, she's pushing in the other, and then what they're doing, they're assuming that he might be stronger because he's bigger, probably weighs more, so they're assuming that he is going to be stronger, so it's showing that the net force, he's probably going to be able to move the box just a little bit against her in the direction she is trying to stop it from going, okay? But then in that third picture there, if you've got two people of equal strength and they're applying the exact same force, then no one's going anywhere, okay? The box is just going to stand still and they're just basically leaning up against it. They're not going to move it, okay? So that's what it's talking about, okay? So a balanced force is when forces are exerted on the object's motion does not always change, okay? It uses an example of an arm wrestling contest. Each person exerts a force on the other one's arm, but the two forces are exerted in opposite directions. And even though both people are pushing very hard, their arm position may not change. And if you're ever watching that on ESPN where they got the professional arm wrestling competition, those great big guys, I mean, they got huge arms, and they do. They'll just like, and they'll just be at a standstill and just be quivering because they're pushing so hard and applying so much force. But they're both so strong that no one's going anywhere for, sometimes it seems like minutes until one of them finally he gives out and the arm goes down. But they are applying a tremendous amount of force, but it's coming from both directions, so it's unbalanced. Neither one of them is actually making any progress momentarily, okay? Balanced force acting on an object do not change the object's motion, okay? So a balanced force is when you're applying the same force on both sides of something. When an equal force is exerted in opposite directions, there's no net force. So like the two people are pushing that box up there, and they're pushing opposite directions, but they're applying the same force, nothing's going to happen, okay? It's not going anywhere. All right. Very good. Goodbye. Hope y'all have, well, actually, you don't get this till Monday. I hope you had a good weekend.